Hey everybody, this is Frilioth and welcome to another Minecraft video. A while ago on Twitter I was asked if the one chunk iron farm could be upgraded to be a resettable multi-village iron farm. You know, the kind of ones that have got several villages sort of interlinked with each other, so you just get loads more iron. And today I want to show you what I've come up with. So as you can see, it's the I've stuck with the old iron farm because that was the brief. There's the iron farm there. I've removed the doors. We had what was it, 12 doors. 12 doors in this corner. We had 12 doors in that corner with our villagers in little pods here. 12 on this side, or 10 on this side, 10 on the other side. And it generated an iron golem every 8 minutes or so, 6 to 8 minutes or so, which was okay. But when you take into account how many resources the one chunk farm generates, the iron farm looked pretty poor. So I was intrigued to make this a multi-village iron farm. Now there are several already out there on the market, and I've taken inspiration from quite a few YouTubers, from Maizuma, from Gruva, from Edxample, and from a guy called Game Time who did a fantastic video on Spigot servers and why multi-village resettable iron farms fail on Spigot servers, and I'll go through that in a little while. And of course there's Tango-Tek, who's probably the daddy when it comes to resettable iron farms. And I've tried to use a bit of everything in this farm, as well as incorporating some ideas of my own. So if we start at where shall we start? We'll start with the doors. Now the doors, it's a bit basic. Most resettable iron farms have got this set up. I've got 11 doors, or there are 30 columns of doors, 30 lines of doors, columns of doors, 30 doors, 30 stacks of doors. Anyway, there are 30 lines of 11 doors on this side. There are 30 lines of 11 doors on the other side, and they're going to be our villages. Each line of doors on this side and on that side will merge together, making the exact center of the village here, and that will happen 30 times. And I've got a fantastic mod that I wouldn't be able to do this without this mod. It's the Bounding Box Villager Marker mod, or something like that, and it's a graphical representation of villages, and it shows the circumference, the radius of the village, and it shows the center of the village. It shows which doors are in which village. It shows the spawning area for the iron golems. I wouldn't be able to make this farm without that particular mod, and I'll show you how it works in a little while. So we've got a couple of trigger villagers that are very important. We've got this guy here who validates all of these doors. Every one of these doors is validated by that villager there, and I'll explain why he's in a minecart later. We've got the same over this side. This villager here validates all of these doors. We have this villager over here. He validates these doors. He pops up once every cycle to validate these doors, and that snaps the village center over to this side of the iron farm, and I'll explain that in a second. Our final guy is, I was going to say the most important, but to be honest, they're all important. But this guy's the guy that does most of the work. He's the guy that goes down this column of doors, creating a village. Initially he'll drop down onto this level here, he'll create a village at the top, and then as he moves down to this level, that village, that door, will snap to this door, creating a bigger village with the center of the village about there. And then after 5 or 6 seconds he'll drop down here, which will validate these doors, which will bring those doors into the village and bring the center of the village down to about there. 6 seconds later he'll fall down here, validating these doors, and there are more doors here than there are at the top because the doors are weighted. So the more doors there are, the closer to these doors the centre of the village will be. So if there are 10 doors here and 1 door at the top, when they form part of the same village, the centre of the village will be closer to the 10 doors than it will be to the 1. Then he'll fall down to these doors, validating them, bringing them into the village, pulling the centre of the village down to about there, and he'll finally come down to these doors, which will bring the centre of the village down to about there, around about the centre of the doors there. And that brings it close enough to these doors to bring them into the village, to form part of the village. And that's important because when those doors and those doors form a village, the centre of the village is here. So the next time the cycle starts and a new village is formed at the top and it brings its way down the column, the new village's centre has to be closer to these doors than the old village. Otherwise, when these doors become validated, they'll snap to the created village that's already in the middle, not the new village. I'm probably over explaining it, and it'll become abundantly clear when I start it working and we see the mod working. Because then, as I say, the graphical representation of it will make everything crystal clear. And last but not least, we have the 25 villagers that form the village. Without these guys, there'd be no iron golems. Now, these have got to be far enough away from these doors as to not to influence these doors. But they've got to be close enough to the village to still form part of the village in the centre. So they're at quite a critical distance. Any closer, and it would cause these doors to be validated too early. Any further away, and they wouldn't form part of the village and no golems will spawn. And lastly, the big N over there obviously signifies that that is north. The iron farm, as with most iron farms, I've not come across one yet that isn't. This one is directional because of how villagers detect doors. Now, a villager detects doors in a certain radius from where he is, and I don't know exactly what that radius is. I'm thinking 32, but don't quote me on that. There are some really good explanations out there on YouTube. But basically, he'll start scanning for doors in the low X and Z coordinate and then work his way positive across the X axis and then up the Y, and then he'll move over one and do the same again. So because of that, I'm not going to go into that because that will bore you. But because of that, this has to be directional, because if it's not, then he'll detect doors in the wrong order and this thing won't work. So currently we have all of the doors invalidated because of these blocks here, these pistons here. They're invalidating sky access. As soon as they're open, that will allow sky access to these doors, and as long as a villager is close enough, i.e. that guy 1 block further up, these doors will become valid and it will form a village. And in order to open those in a specific sequence, I'm using this little contraption here. Now, I've seen on a lot of resettable iron farms people using furnaces and loads of droppers and loads of redstone, or droppers full of items. I thought that used lots of resources. It looked very complicated, so I wanted to do something a lot simpler, and I came up with this. And now the idea came to me while I was watching one of Seth Bling's videos, where he was using something very similar to activate a door when you put a certain amount of items into it, and it basically works. I don't know what the name of this is. It may have a name, it may not, but it uses these comparators set into subtract mode. If a signal is put into the side, in through that block and in through that piece of redstone there, it will subtract the strength of that signal from the signal that's already in there. So the signal strength already in there is 15, and we do that using a torch, which is under there. You can't see it. There it is. So that gives this comparator currently a signal strength of 15. So every time the minecart, the villager in the minecart goes around, he sends a quick pulse here via this little pulse shortener, and we've got one item in here, so that pops over. The signal strength of that comparator is 1, so it will subtract 1 from the 15 that's already there, and that will reduce the signal strength in this line of dust by 1, opening those pistons, which will allow access to the doors. I hope you guys don't mind me trying to explain this. I'm not very good at explaining. Again, it will be much easier once it starts working, but that's the magic that makes this work. Without this, it won't work. So anyway, I've reset it. I've got a lot of resetting buttons to press to start with. I will be sorting that out as and when, but at the moment you have to press that button in order to reset all of the doors, to reset all of the sky access, and you have to do exactly the same on the other side. Now we need to just pop down here and turn the villagers on. We need to put the villagers at the bottom up 1 level. They are now within range of these doors, so as soon as these doors now get sky access, they'll become valid. So what's going to happen, yeah, I've done them both. That guy at the top will start his merry way. He'll start falling down, and we'll see a village being created at the top. And as he falls down to the next level, we'll see the radius of the village getting bigger, and then bigger, and then bigger, and then bigger, and then bigger. And then we'll see him zoom along to the other side, and that's his job done then. He'll go back up to the top and wait for a minute in order for everything to reset. But then he'll go over this redstone, over the detector rail there, which will activate this contraption for the first time, which will open one of these pistons, allowing sky access to the doors on this side. Once he goes over here, over that detector rail, it sends a pulse down to this guy, down to here, and he's activated, and he'll stay up for about 6 seconds or so, and we'll see the village, we'll see the big dome, the radius of the village, which is going to be a lovely bright colour. We'll see it snap over to this side, and we'll see loads of lines coming from these doors, and that's these doors being validated and forming part of the village that was initially created right at the top. Then a few seconds later, this bit of redstone dust will be activated, which will activate this contraption, which is exactly the same as the one on the other side, which is going to open these pistons, which is allowing sky access to these doors, which will then incorporate these doors into the village that's just been created. So then all of the doors that are currently here will be, you know, forming part of a massive village with like a huge radius. But slowly, after 60 seconds or so, the doors that have no longer got villagers near them will start falling out of the village. So we'll first see the line at the top will disappear because the first door created won't be valid, and it'll fall out of the village. Then that one, then that one, then that one. And then these over here will snap and they'll disappear from the village. And the only doors left validated in the first village will be the ones here and the ones directly opposite on that side. And the dead centre of the village will be directly over here. And the golem spawning area then will be directly in the centre of the collection area, this bit here. A few seconds after those doors become invalidated, the timer runs out at the top and the villager is going to fall down again and start creating a second village. And because it's a new village, not created to the one that's already here, it won't be merged. And it'll fall down and it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. Then these doors will be allowed sky access, snapping them to those doors, and then those doors will over there will be validated by that villager, and the cycle will start again. Anyway, I've talked far too much. Let me turn this on and we'll see it working, and then after a couple of cycles I'll speed it up, and then we'll see it creating 30 villages. Now the entire cycle takes about an hour, so it's not quick. Each cycle takes about 2 minutes to do, and that's purely because a villager takes about 6 seconds, between 1 and 6 seconds to detect the doors. So that's why that's why these little contraptions are here. These fence gates here. That's why those ones there. That's why they're there, because if the villager dropped straight through, it wouldn't detect the doors. So we have to keep him in range of the doors just for long enough for him to detect the village. Sometimes it may only take a second, sometimes it may take all of the 6 seconds, but if any of the doors are missed out, it breaks. So that's why he has to stay there for 6 seconds. And also it takes villagers or doors 60 seconds once they become invalidated by the villager falling out of range. It takes a minute for the doors to become invalidated. So the entire cycle takes 2 minutes, and there are quicker ways of doing it, but it would require more redstone. It would require a much bigger area. Now also I've used a lot of doors down here. Tango's Iron Phoenix uses less doors. However, his column is all the way over here. I didn't want mine to be over there. I wanted to make it as small as possible, so I sacrificed doors, those doors there, or more of them, in order to get it within the footprint of the main iron farm. Also, this here is a little more complicated than it needs to be, because again I didn't want it to stick out over the edge. I could have made that a little bit less complicated if it all stuck out over the edge. I didn't want it to, so unfortunately it has to be a little bit more complicated. Now 10 minutes ago I said I was going to stop talking and didn't. Now I'm going to stop talking and we can see it in action. So there we go, the first village has been created, and that's all the way at the top. You can see the red ball, that's the village circumference. The red box is the Iron Golem spawning area if all the criteria were met. At the moment they won't be, because there's only one villager and a few doors in that village. So as he falls down, you'll see the centre of the village, where all the lines merge, is coming further and further down, and that's very important. A little bit further down, a little bit further down. Now he's going to come over here, and these doors are now validated, and you'll see the lines coming to these doors. That indicates that those doors are now part of that village. Now those guys over there, I mentioned that guy over there, he's validated those doors, and it's snapped the centre of the village all the way over to this side. So these doors now are closer to the centre of this village than they are to the centre of this village. And again, that's really important. So the little villager's now made his way back up to the top. He's going to sit there for 60 seconds until these doors become invalidated. If he starts to create a village up there before those doors are invalidated, those doors become part of that village and it breaks. So we've now got to just sit and wait for those doors to become invalidated. And as I said, we can't, it can't be any quicker than 60 seconds. Nearly there. Boop. Now we'll start again and create a brand new village. And exactly the same thing's going to happen. It's going to come down here. These doors are going to be validated and the cycle continues. Now as you can see, there's the village that was already created is now bang in the centre, just there. And this one in a second will get pulled across into the middle, and you can see, because of these fantastically coloured lines, again, that the mod that I'm using makes this, well, it would be, as far as I'm concerned, impossible for me to do this without this mod. So that's now snapped into the middle, and we now have two villagers directly on top of each other with the dead centre just there. And the spawning area, if you look close, you can see it, just about see it. There's a square in the middle there now, the 16 by 16 golem spawning area, and golems will start to spawn in there now. And the system's started again. Now you may be wondering why I've got all of these guys in minecarts. And there's a very good reason for that. I wasn't going to, initially, I wasn't going to put them in minecarts. I was just going to get them standing there. But as I say, the video I watched from a guy called Game Time, and I'll stick a link to his video in the description. Really, really informative. And he talks about how resettable iron farms are broken on some Spigot servers. Now this, at the moment, this is on my PC. It's not on a server. I've not tried to install it yet, or to upload it yet onto my own Spigot server. But some of the resettable iron farms break because Spigot has got a setting on or in it that reduces the tick rate for entities that aren't within the activation range of a player. And it's something that's bothered me for a while. Oh, look at that, they're already forming. I play on a Spigot server, and I've often wondered why, when I'll get out of the range of my farmers or out of range of my cows and sheep, but I'll still be in the loaded chunk. They'll still be loaded, but they stop farming, or they stop breeding, or they stop feeding, or whatever. Just they stop doing what they're doing, and I could never understand why. And after watching the video from Game Time, it makes perfect sense. I believe, and I'm paraphrasing, and I might not have this 100% accurate, but I believe once you're out of the detection range, and I don't know exactly the range of that, it could be 30 blocks, it could be 70 blocks, I don't know, but once you're out of the detection range of the villager, they stop ticking at the normal tick rate. At the moment, they tick at 20 ticks per second. Once you're out of the detection range of the villager, that can fall down to 5% of the tick rate. So as soon as that happens, it means that instead of taking 6 seconds for them to detect a village, it could take a minute or longer. I mean, is it 2 minutes? My maths is not fantastic, but instead of taking 6 seconds, it takes significantly longer. And that's what breaks these farms. That little villager will fall down to that particular door, and then the timer will let him through before he's had a chance to validate that door there. And it's all because of the Spigot setting. Now, Game Time read the code. Obviously a much more intelligent guy than I am, but he's read through the code, and it works out that villagers that are passengers in vehicles, i.e. boats or minecarts, still tick at the standard 20 ticks per second, and they'll also tick at 20 ticks per second if they're in water as well. So if I keep that guy in a minecart, these doors will get validated at the standard normal 20 ticks per second rate. If he was stood there on his own, not in a minecart, there's a very good chance that these doors wouldn't get validated. And it's the same with the guy over there. He stood in a little minecart as well. If he wasn't in a minecart, those doors wouldn't get validated. The village wouldn't get pulled across. It would just break. So to get this to work on a Spigot server, I've got them in minecart. So thank you for that, Game Time. Without that, I'm sure this wouldn't be working. So now I'm going to speed this up using another mod. I've got a tick rate mod. I'm going to speed it up and show you, hopefully, how it works. And once the final line of doors has been validated, forming the last village, a signal is sent to this torch tower. That locks that gate, which stops the villager from going around. That speeds, I mean, it doesn't need to be there. I could lock that hopper and stop the villager from going, but then that would mean that when we turn the farm on again, he'd have to wait for 60 seconds before he started to create villages. So that's what that fence gate's there for. He'll fall down onto that fence gate. So as soon as we turn the farm on again, he'll fall straight through and start creating straight away. I could speed it up a little bit more by also invalidating the doors on this side and the doors over there before he starts to do a cycle, and then there would already be a village, one village in place. So that would reduce the time by about 2 minutes. So I'd knock it down from an hour to 58 minutes. But maybe I'll work on that. There's a lot of refining to do at the moment. I'm still playing with the amount of doors needed. I'm sure there's a mathematical calculation which everybody else has used, but I haven't. I've done this by trial and error. But I've got it working, and to be honest, wood's not hard to find, doors aren't hard to get. So I'm not going to play with it too much. I've been playing with this for 2 weeks. At the moment it's working, and I'm happy with it. So all I need to do now is to hook up all of the reset buttons. Currently there are 2 reset buttons, one on either floor, one on either side, and then the start button is just here. So I need to hook it all up into one place, into like a control panel at the front, because you don't want to be parkouring across this if you've built this in survival, because I mean, let's face it, you are quite a few blocks up in the air. Now, as I mentioned, this takes just under an hour to reset. And obviously the reason for having a resettable iron farm is because if the chunk that this is in is unloaded, then once it's loaded again, all of these villages, currently the 30 villages that are here, they will all be loaded into one massive village. Now, although it'll have loads of doors, it'll still only spawn golems at one every 6 to 8 minutes or so, which is why Tango's Iron Titan, the original iron farm, which is why that broke and he had to create the Iron Phoenix and Gruva did the I forgot what it's called now, but Gruva did a fantastic resettable iron farm, and a few other people have done the same. But that's why you need a resettable one. If you build it in a spawn chunk, then you won't have that problem. But unless it's your own world, or you're lucky enough to be on a server where they let you build in the spawn chunks, you aren't going to be able to do that. You are going to need to reset it. As far as output is concerned, it's pretty standard for a 30-door iron farm. It produces about 2,160 iron ingots an hour. That's not a Minecraft hour, that's a normal human hour. So if you want to switch this on, if you want to AFK overnight, start it working and then AFK overnight, you'll get a couple of chests by the morning. In fact, let's go down and have a look now. I've also incorporated, people are going to be wondering how to get all the way up here. Obviously that's the one chunk farm. Potentially you're going to be miles down there. So I've incorporated a nether tunnel. So if we whiz into the nether, if we then run over to this one, which is linked to a nether portal at the bottom, we can come out and we're at the bottom, which is just a really easy way of getting from the bottom to the top. So if we have a look, while I've been setting this up and messing about, let's have a look how much iron we have. We've got nearly a double chest of iron, and we've just set it up. There was probably a little bit in there to start with. So within me setting it up, I'm running it for about an hour, we've got almost a double chest of iron. So that is fantastic. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I've been playing with for the past 2 weeks. I think it is brilliant. I'm really pleased with myself because it was something I was in awe of. You know, I've seen the resettable iron farms from other people, and I thought, my God, how do people do that? That is fantastic. I really want to do that myself. Now I've done it, and I am so thrilled that I've been able to just about, if you stretch it, just about been able to keep it within the one chunk farming system. Now, if you're interested in how to build this, you're going to have to let me know in the comments. It's not finished yet, as I mentioned. Still got a little bit of work to do on it. But if you want a tutorial on this, you're going to have to let me know. But it's going to be a long one. It's going to be a long old tutorial if that's what you want. But I'll just have to wait and see how many people are interested in this particular contraption. If there are enough people interested, then I'll do a tutorial. If there aren't, then so be it. So I hope you've enjoyed this update video, everybody. If you have, please don't forget to leave it a like. And if you've really loved it, don't forget to subscribe for future videos. This is Frilioth. Oh, and before I go, I need a name for this bad boy. So give me some names in the description if you can think of a decent one. And maybe when I get around to building it on my server, I'll give it a name. So anyway, thanks for watching. Brilliant having you along. This is Frilioth, and I'm out of here.